my name is Quori-Tyler, aka QT, aka Books with QT, and in today's video, I'm giving you my top 10 books of 2024. And happy Vlogmas! Was honestly a great year of reading for me. I found some of my favorite books, discovered some of my favorite series, and met some of my new favorite authors, and I'm excited to talk all about it with you today. There's nothing I love more than talking about books, so this is going to be a really fun video. So I have my top 10 books here in order from 10 all the way up to number 1, and we're going to go through and say exactly why they made my top 10 list of the year. Also, by the way, I read 50 books this year, so this is my top 10 out of 50, in case you care. Coming in number 10 is Wild Love by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Rose Hill series and such an incredible cowboy romance. This year I did get into cowboy romances thanks to Elsie Silver and also Lila Sage. Those are the two authors that I had seen everyone on TikTok talking about with their country romances, and I can confidently say the hype is so real. A small town, like, oh, give it to me. So Wild Love is about Ford Grant, who is a billionaire. He owns a record label and has a recording studio in the small town of Rose Hill. One day, all of a sudden, this little girl knocks on his door and says that she is his daughter. He was not aware that he was necessarily a father, so that was gonna be crazy. Then around the same time, we have Rosie, who comes back to Rose Hill. She's originally from Rose Hill, grew up there, moved away to the big city for her career, but she recently got fired, so she moves back to Rose Hill and starts working for Ford's record label. I mean, you can only imagine a workplace romance. The emails they send back and forth are so cute when they're literally in the same office. And Rosie helps take care of Ford's new daughter that he just found out about, does not judge him at all, and gives her all into that relationship. And it's just, honestly, it had me giggling, kicking my feet. The banter was so cute. I liked this book because it wasn't too deep, but it also wasn't too fluffy. There was like kind of a nice baseline, so that's what this was. Coming in number 9 is Expiration Dates by Rebecca Searle, and honestly, I'm sad that I don't talk about this book as much as I really want to. I read this book in one sitting. I literally sat there, opened up the book, decided I would read a few pages, and all of a sudden I was done with it. This was so incredible. Right before this video, I was kind of going through all the books just to read up on them again and refresh my memory of what they were about, and I almost started crying at one of the quotes that I read in here. So Expiration Dates is about Daphne Bell, and she's kind of just this character who is going through the motion, is not truly living her life to the fullest. She's just following this plan. Also, when she started dating a few years ago, she started receiving these little papers. This is where the magical realism kind of comes in with this book, which you have to suspend reality a little bit in your mind in order to truly enjoy this book, but I think it's well worth it. So years ago when Daphne started dating, she was receiving these papers every time she would go on a first date, and the paper would just have a time on it, like 30 days or 1 year. What she found out is those papers were telling her how long she was going to be with the person she was on a date with. So she would always gear up. If she knew she would only have 3 months with that person, she'd kind of gear up around the 2.5 month mark and realize that like this is gonna end soon, and something would always happen and it would end exactly when the paper said that it would. But at the start of this book, she's set up on a blind date, and when she gets to the date, she receives a paper that has no time on it. It's just a blank piece of paper. Obviously, she assumes that this means this is going to be her soulmate and they are gonna be together forever. She's kind of second guessing whether or not she feels like this is her soulmate and the person she wants to be with forever, and it's scaring her, the fact that she doesn't have a timeline like she has for the rest of her relationship. So we're exploring all of that, kind of getting an insight into her mind of why she just goes with the flow with things and doesn't take her life into her own hands. And I feel like it was kind of like a coming of age book. I feel like I saw myself a lot in Daphne, and that's what made this a really great read for me. Book number 8 is a fantasy book, and I feel like this was really my year of getting into fantasies that I truly enjoyed. Last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, I read a Court of Thorns and Roses series for the first time and loved it, but then no fantasy touched that ever since then, until this year. So number 8 is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This was another fast-paced read. I feel like for me, a lot of the times, a 5-star or a really good book goes hand in hand with a book that I read really fast, because it means that I'm really into it and I don't want to put the book down. And that was definitely the case with Divine Rivals. So Divine Rivals is a fantasy that kind of reads like a historical romance. There's a war happening, but it's a war between like fae of different lands or something like that. Our main character, Iris, her brother is fighting in the war. So she writes writes on this magical typewriter and slips letters under her closet door, and that's supposed to get to him. But then when she receives letters back, she realizes it's not from her brother, it's from this mysterious man that she doesn't know, and they continue to write letters back and forth to each other, and the letters are so beautiful. There's something about like writing letters in a book that really just gets me, because I think the way people write is different than how they talk, and sometimes it's more poetic and beautiful. And the way that this book ends is actually crazy. I need to read Ruthless Vows, which is the second book. I haven't read it yet. It had me flipping the pages like I was about to lose my mind. Coming in at number 7 is This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. This is a big surprise to me because, okay, not really a surprise. So I loved Carly Fortune's first book, Every Summer After. That was a 5-star for me. It was one of the first books I've read ever in my reading journey. But I did not like her second book at all, which was Meet Me by the Lake. And I honestly had low expectations going into The Summer Will Be Different, but it highly exceeded my expectations. This is a best friend's brother trope. I don't even know if that's a trope, but that's what this was. Think Bring It On. You know in Bring It On when Tori is kind of falling in love with or dating her best friend's brother, and they're like in the bathroom brushing teeth together, and it's so cute. That's kind of the vibes I was getting the whole time I was reading this book. So it's kind of like that Bring It On trope, but make it a little deeper. So Lucy and Bridget have been best friends forever. But every summer growing up, Lucy and Bridget's brother kind of had something going on that they didn't want to tell Bridget about. Years go by, Lucy moves to a big town and starts her own business and all of these things, but then she's kind of lost and losing herself, so she goes back to the small town because Bridget's getting married and there's some wedding festivities going on, and she uses this time to kind of get grounded again. But of course she is back reunited with her best friend's brother, and things get crazy, like in the best way possible. I felt really happy when I was reading this book. I read it at the very beginning of the summer, and it was just the perfect vibes for that. There are some deeper things going on, but not like trauma, so I was able to enjoy it as like a fluffy read, but it didn't feel shallow. Number 6 is kind of surprising. It's a YA mystery thriller. I'm not a huge YA fan. I feel like sometimes the books can be a little bit surface level for me and not as entertaining, but I truly enjoyed The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Again, another one I read in one sitting in one day. I could not put this book down. I'm not done with the series yet. I've only read the first 2 books so far, and I think there's 4 altogether. It's about these teenagers who have special abilities to read people, to catch people in lies, basically do things that FBI agents are trained to do for years and years, and they have natural abilities to do it. So they work with the FBI to solve cold cases. There's a lot of found family in here, interesting cases going on that they're having to solve. All these things are interconnected. Main character, something happened with her mom that's kind of connected to the cases that they're solving. Page turner, can't put it down. All right, moving on to my top 5 books of 2024. Coming in number 5 is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. Honestly, I mean, my whole top 5, it was hard to put them in order from like favorite to least favorite, whatever. This was such a great book. The only reason it's in 5 and not closer to number 1 is because it did take me a long time to read, and I think it was because some things were a little bit drawn out, or I feel like there's just a lot of words. There's a lot happening in this book. But then once I got to the end of it, I realized that all of that needed to be said and needed to happen in order for me to feel the way that I felt at the end of it. But it wasn't one of those books where the whole time I was like, this is a 5-star, this is a 5-star. But at the end, I was like, this is definitely a 5-star. This one is, in contrast to the other romance books I was talking about, extremely deep. We have a lot of trauma happening. This is the first book that I read about a divorce and what they kind of were going through as a married couple. It was wild to see what they went through while they were married and how they were kind of able to get through that, but then also navigating the relationship they had and figuring out what emotions were towards the traumatic thing that happened versus what was actually just towards each other. And I think what Kennedy Ryan did a really good job of in this book is showing that relationships are so complicated, and especially marriages where kids are involved. Things are not always as fluffy and as easygoing as a lot of romance books make them seem, and love is complicated and figuring out feelings you have towards each other. So that was just all very beautiful to me. Kennedy Ryan's writing is so good. There were so many quotes that I underlined in here. I felt a lot of things towards this book. Coming in number 4 is Powerless by Elsie Silver, another Elsie Silver book. This is a friends to lovers small town cowboy romance. And like, that's all I really have to say. And you should understand why it's number 4. Oh, it's also hockey romance, but like not in the way that most hockey romances are a bit shallow. This one was like actually good to me. I don't usually like hockey romances, but this one was good. Our 2 main characters are Jasper and Sloane. Jasper is a famous hockey player. Sloane is a ballerina who comes back to her small town after having an injury and reunites with Jasper, who she's always had a crush on growing up. So we get a past and present timeline. And in the past, you can see how much of a crush she has on Jasper. But what she doesn't know at the time is what we see through Jasper's point of view, that he was looking out for her the whole time when they were growing up and really had feelings towards her as well. But he was always just like her brother's older best friend that's kind of unattainable. But then once they realize that they do have feelings for each other in the present, it's still a little bit complicated because of things that have happened in Jasper's past and things that are happening in Sloane's present, and it's hard for them to fully admit what they want from each other. Another beautiful one. This is my favorite book in the Chestnut Springs series. Number 3 is another new obsession of mine, Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This is the first book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. There's 3 books, right? Yeah. Wow, did not expect to like this that much. Again, I have a reading vlog where I read this and talked about all of my thoughts in depth, so I'm not gonna go too crazy here. It's about Evangeline Fox, who's a hopeless romantic, but the love of her life is about to marry someone else. So she goes to the Prince of Hearts and makes a deal with him to stop the wedding, and she would do whatever he wanted. Little did she know that whatever he wanted was gonna be a lot crazier than she expected, as are most deals when you make deals with fae and fantasy books. So this book is just kind of exploring how she pays him back for what he did. And it gets complicated and really interesting and entertaining and fast-paced. And then the second book in this, Ballad of Never After, was probably even better than this book for me, but I wanted to start here and pay ode to the book that made it all happen. Okay, are you guys ready for number 2 and number 1? I'm not sure if anyone will guess what 2 and 1 are. Okay, number 2 is Daisy Hates the Great Undoing. When I was looking at my Goodreads and realized that I read this in January of this year, I was like shocked. I thought I had read this book like 2 years ago, because it just feels like it's been a part of my life for so long. As you guys might or might not know, I love the Magnolia Park series, but Daisy's books are so much better to me in my opinion. Except for Magnolia Park's Into the Dark, which kind of goes at a tie for second, but I only wanted to talk about one of the books right now. But the Daisy Hates book was so beautiful. This is another one right before this video I was looking through, and some of the quotes that I underlined were actually making me tear up. I'm gonna put a picture on the screen right now of me actually tearing up just reading some of the quotes. I liked this book a lot because with all Daisy books, I feel like we get a better understanding of who Daisy is as a character and what her motivations are and her feelings and her backstory from her childhood and her brother Julian. So in this book, with the romance aspect of it, we all know and love Christian, but we got some other relationship things with Daisy in this book that I thought was really cool. Everyone's always like, oh my gosh, I love BJ, I love Julian, I love blah, 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 blah. We're not talking enough about all of the prospects that Daisy has. I love that for my girlie. The people in Daisy's lives have such deep-rooted ties to her because of the circumstances of her life and her being surrounded by death all the time. I think that she knows herself really well, so it's really fun to read from her perspective the things that are going on. Okay, my number 1 book of the year is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I think this book made me cry more than anything this year, probably anything in the last 2 years. Now this is a book. It's a romance book. It's literary fiction. It's coming of age. It's found family. It's friendship. It's just, oh my gosh. I kind of put this book off at first to read because I was like, it's kind of a hefty book, a little bit long. I don't know if I'm gonna get into it. But as soon as I started reading it, I did not want it to be over. So the meet cute in this is really cool and kind of a funny concept. These 2 characters both have this thing where whenever they date someone, that person ends up marrying the next person that they date, and so they feel like they're cursed, and they meet through a Reddit thread talking about this. So they decide to date each other, and they figure that if they date each other, then the next person that each of them date respectively is going to end up being their soulmate and the person they marry. But then of course, once you have fake dating in a book, things get a little complicated and a little crazy and feelings start to come up. And that's what happens in Just for the Summer. In addition to that, they're fake dating, but also Emma and Justin have some traumatic things happening in their life. Emma has a very complicated relationship with her mom. Justin's having to take care of his siblings, so they're trying to figure all of that out. Emma also is having some issues with trusting people and loving people because of this relationship she has with her mom, and her mom makes appearances in this too, and we're able to see that complicated dynamic of a relationship, and wow, Justin helps her through that. I think the ending of this book is what is so special, because kind of similar to Before I Let Go, I think that Abby Jimenez does a good job of showing that not all romantic relationships are so straightforward, and I think a lot of times in romance books it can kind of just seem like rinse and repeat. We're gonna get the third act breakup, then they're gonna end up at the end together, and then we're gonna get the epilogue where in 2 years later they're having children. The ending of this was so twisty and turny and complicated, and I think that's what I liked the most, is that it was kind of unpredictable for me. And Abby Jimenez's writing is just, I mean, we don't need to say too much about that, because if you've ever read one of her books, you know. All right, those were my top 10 books of 2024. Again, such a great year for reading for me. I'm excited to get into 2025. I need to start making my TBR for books that I'm excited to read in 2025. Overall, I would say I had probably my best year of reading this year, even though I've read the least that I've read since starting my reading journey. But I think it's okay, because I had some very quality books, and I'm excited that I got to share 10 of my favorites with you today. Let me know in the comments your #1 book of 2024. I want to see if I've read it and if it compares to any of mine. But yeah, that's all I have for you. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I will see you tomorrow for day 10 of Vlogmas. Bye. Mwah.
You got me going into overdrive.